Yo, my dude, what is up?
What up? We here. We out
Ooh.
here for it.
It's a glorious day, my friend.
Of course, dude. I got a little glow on my screen. The sun's coming through at this beautiful hour of recording the Pixelists podcast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are now. So I don't even know what to call this, but we just campaign 3 Critical Role. We just had the announcement, and so we decided we had to jump on here and just talk about it real quick.
This is the campaign 3 announcement reaction video.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Put it in the title. So if it doesn't say that, I'm calling you.
But so, yeah, I mean, we just got the news, and we. Side note: we're the Pixelists. I forgot. I'm just excited. That's my buddy Blake over there. I'm my buddy Will, and together we are the Pixelists, and we like to talk about all sorts of nerdy stuff: shows, video games, movies, D&D campaigns in this case.
Absolutely.
And Critical Role live streamed D&D campaign. If you're not familiar, if you're on this video, I'm sure you are familiar. But campaign 3 was just announced, and bro, it's starting in 3 weeks. It's coming soon.
They at the end of Exandria, they gave a little wrap up and said, we'll be talking about it later in the year, which kind of made it seem like this was coming at like 2022 for the earliest.
Yeah.
And so out of nowhere, it was like, hey, announcement this Thursday. And then literally within this last hour, we got the announcement of campaign 3 setting up here, going live 3 weeks from now, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, October 21st to be exact. But yeah, I was with you. I was thinking, maybe optimistically November, December at the earliest. So super excited we're getting it so soon. And
well,
then
go ahead.
Nope.
I was just saying, we've been talking about where's our D&D content for our Pixelist fans who, all the other stuff's very well and good, but they're like, we want more D&D. So right. we had talking about doing like a rewatch of like or a first time watch of campaign 1 and 2, and although I still want to get into those things at some point, yeah. I am just excited to be adventuring into the continent of Marquette.
Yes,
here in a few weeks, going at it fresh.
So yeah, that was the announcement that this one will take place in Marquette, which I guess let's just talk about that a little bit while we're here. That is a place that has had some exposure in campaign 1, but not very much. And
okay, so it's been referenced before then.
Yes. Again, okay. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone from any of the earlier campaigns. Not that this is really a big one, but it's just a place that hasn't been touched on much. It has been a very little amount in campaign 1. Don't think it even came up ever in campaign 2. Maybe it did. You'll have to correct me if somebody remembers. But yeah, there's in particular a character from campaign 1 that was from Marquette. And yeah, it's just a place that hasn't been touched on much. And I wish I had this on record somewhere, but one of my guesses was that campaign 3 might take place here. I can't prove that. You'll have to take my word for it. But I was trying to think of like if they would continue the theme of trying to like explore a new place in Exandria, and I was like, maybe Marquette.
So but like, yeah. have we gotten a global map, so to speak, of all the continents where they are?
Yes. Yes, for the most part. I'm sure, like, since it's D&D and it's an evolving world, I'm sure Matt could, like, add new things if he wanted, obviously. But there is, like, a fully mapped out
let me look here.
Picture of the world.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And Marquette is on here. Sure enough.
So, super excited. And, I mean, I guess let's just. I mean, that's the big news, right? Campaign 3, 3 weeks, October 21st, taking place in Marquette. But they actually dropped a few different announcements there that we could touch on. And um, the other big thing was that it is they were kind of cryptic about this, but it is going to be the same cast. Matt still is going to be the DM. He even clarified as much on Twitter. But
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I mean, for me, it was like everything was on fire and like, what does this
yeah,
mean? What's happening? But I just put my kid down, so I didn't have time to do any follow up. So he clarified, and by the way, for people who maybe didn't catch the announcement, we're kind of recapping it also. He said, be prepared for new storytellers.
right.
So you're saying he followed up and said, I will continue to be the DM.
Yes. So I'm just going to read it verbatim here. He says, more to be revealed, but I am still GMing this campaign, and the main cast is present. Some other fun things and other content will mix things up as we go. And Marisha hinted at something similar to that effect during the reveal when she said that, like, we're like, I don't remember verbatim what she said, but like new storytellers will, give the chance for things, which is kind of the same language they used for EXU when we
That's what I'm
got
wondering.
Abria to show up,
Are
and
we referring to events that are happening in like side story campaigns, like new seasons of EXU that maybe take place on that fourth week? Because another maybe just real quick, let's just hit like the big reveals for people who haven't caught it, so that way as we're referencing these things, people are like, wait, what?
Okay.
So, and you can help me fill this in. So the announcement, the State of Critical Role announcement was very brief. It was only a few minutes. And the big things that came out were new set. Every episode moving forward will continue to be pre-recorded. One, it's just so much simpler because of the nature of COVID. But two, it just allowed a lot of flexibility for the cast.
Right.
The next thing was that the fourth Thursday, or excuse me, the last Thursday of every month will not feature a new episode, but there will be Critical Role content. And so it seemed like they might do some replays of previous episodes, maybe put in a random one shot. We'll talk about that more in a second. We mentioned already that there was a reference to there's going to be new storytellers. And finally, that this campaign will be happening on the continent of Marquette. Did I miss any of the... Oh, and that the fan art reel, which I am so personal to.
Yeah,
it really hurt.
We'll talk about that.
The fan art reel will no longer be part of the produced to Twitch, YouTube, the final version that goes up. Instead, that fan art reel will continue to be on the Critical Role website with credit to the original artists. Anything else that I missed?
Just one other thing that I caught is that there is an after show coming.
Which I didn't know what that meant, because having not watched C1 and C2.
So at the end of C1 and for virtually all of C2, there was like a Critical Role talk show after show that they aired on Tuesdays called Talks Machina, which is like a pun based on the name of the group from Campaign 1. And it's just like if you've ever seen any of those after shows that like Chris Hardwick did, for like Talking
Bad.
It's kind of like that. But it's got this Critical Role spice to it. They stopped doing it because of the pandemic. They kind of started to do a little bit of a remote version, and then the guy that was running it is Brian W. Foster, Ashley Johnson's fiance. But if you'll recall, like a couple months ago, he kind of revealed that he was stepping away from the company to pursue like his own stuff. So people were kind of wondering, like, all right, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to have somebody else host an after show? But anyway, so they didn't really discuss this at all, but we did get the announcement that yes, an after show is coming for Campaign 3, but that won't be until 2022. So we're not going to have that for the first part of the campaign. But that was the only other thing that I think you hit everything else.
Mm-hmm. So tying it back then to our original conversation point of what gets filled in that fourth, or I keep saying four, I know some months have 5 Thursdays, but that last Thursday of the month.
Yeah.
Could it be a perfect opportunity to have a monthly EXU added episode,
Yeah.
whether it be a continuation from season 1, which I put in quotations because it's still very much unclear if continuations of EXU are going to be that
Right.
same cast,
Mhm.
same cast, or if we're going to get a variety of stories told, whether it's a one shot or something continual.
Right.
That feels like the perfect place to me, but it seems like the pacing would be a bit too slow. And again, we have no idea what this comment means of multiple storytellers, but to put in some other DM and their cast on any of those 3 other weeks feels like very little progression of the main campaign, if we can call it that.
Yeah, so I mean, we're obviously just spitballing here, but
Yeah.
what I maybe even interpreted was that Matt's still the DM, the main cast is still there, but like they emphasize that, but some creative stuff, crazy stuff might happen. So I'm thinking there might even be guest DMs, but for the main campaign. Like I don't
Yeah.
necessarily know what like the situation would call for that, but I do know that there was one thing Matt wanted to do in campaign 2, but um of the nature of D&D, the players may go left when you are planning for things to go right. He had this planned out with Matt Colville, which I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
Yeah, highly respected for his own
yeah.
What's the name of what he does?
He's big in the TTRPG scene. Like he has a nice YouTube series called Running the Game where he can like help you learn how to DM.
Sure.
I think he does his own.
He
I think
does
he
his
has his
own
own campaign as well.
Let me look here what it's called, because it's also highly regarded as well.
Yeah. While you're looking that up, so what was going to happen was Matt. They're both named Matt, so this gets confusing. So Mercer was going to have Colville step in like during campaign 2 and sit in the DM chair, just like in the middle of an episode to like throw a huge curveball to the players. And Colville was going to DM. So since that was percolating in Matt's mind for campaign 2, that makes me wonder maybe that's kind of what they're alluding to here. Like maybe for whatever the situation might be, like maybe Abria walks in and sits down and Matt gets up and she starts GMing this section of campaign 3 for a session or for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
And then, Critical Role's always had guests coming in before the pandemic. So I also take that to mean that there will be guests.
I thought that could happen. I was thinking about like the because it's Matt's campaign, right? So like the clunkiness, I guess, is what makes me apprehensive of like someone else sliding in. And it's really none of my business how they would set it up anyway. But I just envision like, would Matt say, hey, here are the rails of like where I've kind of envisioned like this circumstance that they're in, play within that? Or is it literally, here's where they're up to, whatever you want to see happen next? That feels a bit too free from Matt's style, which I've inferred to be very much pre-planned, not in the sense of like railroading, but he's conceptually thought about the world and the players in it and what they could then encounter. And so it seems a bit, it would seem a little bit off just to give free total, like an Abria example of, create Neardalpak,
right.
Where she actually invented an entire town. So I'm curious to see how mechanically this would play out, and if it would feel strange or if it would be like, okay, that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're just completely spitballing here. Like that, what I just described may not even ever happen. But if it did, I think it would be more along the lines of here's this like objective or specific mission they happen to be on. Like, hey, go to X city and pull off this bank heist, and then like boom, another GM steps in to like guide that specific thing, and so they don't really have to know, everything else that's going on. That was kind of what was going to go on with the Colville thing I was talking about. I don't want to sidetrack too much talking about this, but he was like a master of like information. Think of like the FBI type of thing, CIA, and he was going to like sit down and have all this information on all the players to like freak them out, and like basically they were going to have to like run these missions for him. And so it was kind of like a self-contained thread within the greater story, so that so it wouldn't get messy to those things you were kind of alluding to.
Yeah, I guess so. The other thing I wonder about too is, I guess, how do you still maintain the sense of rhythm and consistency that you typically get with Matt as the DM every week? The other thing I think about too is, I mean, we've all understood that this can't go on forever, so to speak, in the sense of Matt probably will not till the end of time continue to DM, or maybe he will. I don't know.
Probably
The
not.
the implication I get is that it's extremely exhausting work, and just in terms of creativity and keeping things fresh, I would foresee a point where maybe he takes a hiatus from DMing or steps away entirely from DMing and wants to be a player, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt like with EXU, it was almost like a softball to us, the fans of, hey, we want to start to
Yeah.
ease you into this. And regardless of people's reactions to EXU, this to me is another data point of that,
Yeah.
of, hey, we're continuing to familiarize and increase the comfort level of our critters to it being not Matt.
Yeah.
You know, instead of, because we talked at the start of EXU about how a lot of the criticism um felt our own criticism even felt a bit like, well, it's just not Matt. And that seemed to be the case early on in EXU. Now, naturally, you guys can go watch our EXU deep dive. There's plenty of other criticisms that are well warranted that we even ourselves had. But I guess getting away from not Matt syndrome is, I think, an explicit goal, is I think what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's just, like he even came out and like I said a minute ago, like I mentioned a second ago, he clarified, I am GMing this campaign. It is the same cast. So like he's assuaging some of those fears, but I think absolutely that's what they're setting up, just baby steps, maybe campaign 4, he's not going to be the DM, and they're maybe getting us in some familiar faces to cling
It
to if that does
it
happen.
it kind of disappoints me because I never watched C1, and I only saw like around 20 episodes of C1. I only
Hmm.
saw about 10 episodes of C2. It disappoints me that I won't get the original experience that many other people have had, which is Matt at the helm, taking the players through the campaign. And naturally, I don't even know how this is going to play out. I mean, it could be brilliant, it could be amazing, and it might be a really cool. We look back in hindsight and we see that was a really nice way to freshen up a long-standing campaign. But I am disappointed that my experience watching through this campaign won't be what everyone else has experienced.
No, it still will be. He's still at the helm of this one. We don't even know what this new
True.
faces thing
Yeah,
even
we have
means.
no idea. Yeah.
But I'm saying, but even if there are even if 5 out of 115 episodes are different DMs, I mean, it's still Matt at the helm for this one,
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm scared in my heart for when he steps down. I don't want that to happen. I love him.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
mean, he's been phenomenal to the point of his own DM advice styled YouTube channel or videos, highly revered in the DM space. Even to the point of people saying, "Hey, in your games, don't get in over your head of like, well, it's not, I don't have like the 18 different voices and
yeah.
all these different things." But um, all that to say, they also said there are going to be it's going to be a very unique experience. I'd like to pick your brain on, let's Mephisto a little bit here
Okay.
on, and maybe it's just that comment of different storytellers, because the comment that Marisha made of like, this is going to be a very unique experience, or maybe Matt said it, I can't remember, but it was pretty close to the comment of multiple storytellers. Then again, everything was pretty close together because, like I said, it was only a few minutes long.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your best guess on what could make this campaign unique. And just for our audience's perspective, we know that campaign 1 was very traditional high fantasy type of setting. You've mentioned that campaign 2 was a little bit different from that. Campaign 3, what makes it unique and special?
Man, I don't know. I mean, so obviously my best guess was kind of that weird situation I described with like maybe we get a few fresh faces in behind the DM screen a little bit. But as far as like you know, like you said, campaign 1 was kind of like the traditional kind of high fantasy hero's journey ish type of thing. Campaign 2 is more of a gray, like finding the story in the gray, not like black and white. So campaign 3, I mean, from Matt's perspective, I think he's just trying to flesh out the world. And what'll be interesting to find out is when this takes place. I don't know if they've said, like, in terms of like, hey, is it 300 years after the events of campaign 2? Is it the next day? You know, the only thing I even saw remotely referencing time was it says it takes place after EXU. Um, which I would have assumed
Mm,
that were to be the case, but it is interesting that they explicitly said that. So maybe some of the things that got brought up in EXU will become relevant. I don't want to. I mean, not that I don't want to spoil it here, just in case somebody hasn't watched EXU. But
right.
you can if you're interested in what our thoughts there are, you can go check out our EXU videos. We go into it. Um, I forgot what I was saying, but yeah, oh yeah. Depending on when it is in the universe, I think that's more what Matt's focused on, like just fleshing out the world, maybe taking the plot threads that maybe are dangling from EXU or perhaps even campaign 2, maybe even some things from campaign 1, and just fleshing that out organically. But what Matt does is he lets the players decide. He'll have these big things maybe happening in the background, but ultimately the path the
Hmm.
players go down decides the story. So really, to me, I'm wondering what each of the individual cast members are thinking, because from campaign 1 to campaign 2, most of them took pretty different choices in terms of
Hmm.
like the type of character they created. So since they kind of did like the classical good guys, and they kind of did like the not they weren't bad guys by any means, but they kind of
Misfits
yeah,
almost.
they kind of did the
Yeah.
misfits, the anti-heroes in a way. I'm wondering what the next step is. Like, is it just, could it be anything? Maybe they want to return back to more of a classic high fantasy, like, I doubt it though. They're all like very good storytellers themselves and
Hmm.
great actors. So I think they just want stuff that's meaty
Hmm.
and you know can go in on. And I know I haven't answered your question at all, but really I don't know.
No, yeah. I mean, it will be. It does make you wonder. Okay, what is the next thing now?
Yeah.
And part of me gets a little apprehensive on like, okay, it has to be different for the sake of being different when, different doesn't necessarily mean better. And so I
Right.
think going another Misfits arc or another traditional high fantasy arc, either one is perfectly fine and well. These are definitely veterans to D&D, so regardless whatever they decide, there will still be like that team synergy and that um I would be surprised if it was so different that like characters are explicitly evil,
Yeah.
but they're finding a way to root for them regardless. I'd be surprised to see something like that happen. But I've always been a sucker for, like Lord of the Rings, high fantasy. And so since I haven't experienced campaign 1 through and through, it'd be cool to see those kinds of characters. Um, but and also maybe a little bit more of a structured group in the sense of, I know alignment isn't a deliberate thing in Matt's campaigns, but um, I really enjoyed Orm's character in EXU.
Hmm.
But there was this sense of a bit like herding cats in each
Yeah.
EXU episode, like where they're like, one great example is like, hey, we're finally to Neardalpak. And it's like, everyone jumps in and starts like swimming. And you're kind of like, because I think it was like 4 out of 6 were, was it 6 people total? 6 with Furai. 4 out of 6, I think, were chaotic, neutral or chaotic good.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of sense that a little bit in the party of, there's just there's not a lot of like singular motivation or drive, I guess. And of course, I'm biased with Orm because I love Liam O'Brien. But it would be cool to see a group that is a bit more intentioned, I think. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think the kind of the issue you're kind of speaking of is just less of a thing in the main campaigns, just because I think some of that was like not railroading says like such a negative connotation, but just when you only have 6 episodes, or was it 8? I don't even
I don't
remember.
even remember,
But
honestly.
however many you had, there's kind of some weird stuff that, kind of has to happen in
Yeah.
terms of herding and stuff. So I think, even if we did have like some conflicting, like you said, Matt doesn't really do alignments. Maybe he'll lean more into it though. Even if we have some conflicting personalities or whatever you want to call
Mhm.
it, I think that could still just be interesting and wouldn't really
Sure.
detract from like, hey, we can't progress the story because of this. I think it would, with the flexibility of a full campaign, it could just lead to interesting,
I think this
you know,
cast is so experienced that it would be interesting story tension.
yeah,
And again, I apologize. EXU is the best data point I have, right? So I'm going to keep referencing it, and it's the most recent thing we've talked about also. But the example of this I think of is Dorian and Orem, where
mm,
Dorian offers to hold the crown uh, from Dariax,
yeah,
and Orem explicitly says, like, "You're not doing that. Like, you need to give
yeah,
that back." Like that kind of tension, I think they would play out really well. So I'm not apprehensive of like kind of like our more homebrew style games where it's like, well, I'm not going into the town and like everyone else
yeah,
is, and you're kind of like, okay, well, as the DM, I'm not gonna play out two different scenarios here. You're just
yeah,
gonna have to get over it. So, but but yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm just ready, man. I mean, 3 weeks. I'm happy that it's so close. I guess I'll
yeah.
say that.
Me too. And yeah, so it's been so long. It's been like I guess 4-ish years since campaign 2 launched, but I'm pretty sure they like kind of drip fed us information leading up to it. So since the campaign starts in 3 weeks, I imagine next Thursday and the following Thursday we might get some like maybe we get the cast reveal of like what character, like what race or what class. Actually, maybe not. I can't remember if that gets revealed in Ep 1. But I do seem to remember they released like a silhouette artwork
Hmm.
of the cast that was like blacked out, but you could see the silhouettes. And so like people could like try to guess like, oh, that looks like
Hmm.
in campaign 2's case, a goblin, like, oh, I bet that's Sam, and or that looks like a tiefling. So I
Hmm.
wonder if they'll do something like that again that might, give us something to feed on while we're
Yeah,
waiting.
some
Um,
breadcrumbs for sure. Well, I know they're gonna give the They said they're releasing a
oh yeah,
uh
like a lore
new.
video.
Yes, that's right. They said they were releasing the lore video for people who are maybe new to Exandria. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. They also said they're going to release a video on the new set
Oh
as
yeah,
well. And so those are possibly two pieces of drip fed content that could keep people excited till the 21st.
yeah, that's a good point. Well, we'll have to sit down and see what the lore video actually is, but maybe we could discuss that too. It'd be
It
interesting,
would,
especially from like, it might be a lot of new stuff to you, and I could answer questions or something.
yeah. Well, and I'd be curious because they've also, I'm wondering this will still be the case. But Matt, I know in the past has been very clear to say like, hey, this next piece of content won't give away spoilers of like
Yeah,
previous content.
yeah,
So I'm interested to see if they still continue to keep to that with the lore video, or how they will explain the lore without also divulging big story points from C1 and C2,
that is true.
or if they'll just say, hey, just so you know, this is going to talk about these things, so just know that going in. Um,
That's true.
so
If there definitely will be a disclaimer, I bet if it is spoilery, but it might even just be more of like a world lore, not
mhm,
like the lore of the
mhm,
characters from campaign 1 and 2.
right.
But there still might be some spoilery aspects to that. But
I,
yeah, and
I
this. Okay, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was
No, I was
moving
changing the
along.
subject. So was I,
Oh,
but you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, moving on to the set video, that little quick glimpse we got looked pretty awesome, and it's exciting just to have the cast back at one table because they've all
Mhm,
been at the end of campaign 2, and I think EXU as well. They were all at their own little desks because of the
right,
pandemic, so just
right.
excited to have that kind of communal aspect back.
Yeah, that CR branded DM screen also
That's right.
looking real nice.
That's right.
So I was just going to change the subject and talk about a comment you made earlier on like when will this take place.
Mm,
Part of me feels like this would have to take place after EXU of like just continuing to build on Exandria.
yeah.
Um, but then on the other hand, I could totally see them like, it's Marquette, 1,000 years ago, and it's a totally like bottled out
That
insular
would be cool.
thing. But I don't know. Part of me wonders, like, where does Matt want to take this eventually? Like, does he want these campaigns to and the important characters in them to converge or continue to pop up and be peppered into future content? It seems like from EXU that was a bit of the case. So I'd be curious to see if for campaign 3, if it is following on the heels of EXU. And it feels like the other reason why I feel like it might be a continuation is EXU, despite this being a source of frustration, seemed to set up a multitude of really important characters and story bits.
Yeah.
Some examples, especially for people who maybe didn't watch EXU, being generically spoiler friendly as best as I can. We know that there is something happening in the or in an elemental plane that's trying to push through.
Yeah.
We had some references to named characters like the War Queen. Naturally, one of the biggest ones would be Lolth. All of this seems to be prime setup for C3 material, which is why I wonder if this would happen on the heels of EXU.
Yeah. So I mean, like I think we just don't know when, but it definitely is after. So they aren't doing the, ancient timeline as it were. But it'll be interesting to see if it's like same time frame as EXU or 30 years later,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we'll get any type of reveal on that, or if it'll just be we'll have to piece it together once the campaign starts airing and see if we can, time it out.
I'm curious if I've pulled up a few different maps of Exandria, and Marquette's pretty similar on all of them. I'm curious if any of this will be retconned in any way, or if it'll stick to what's, so to speak, established.
Yeah, I'd say for the large part it'll stick to it, because I mean this is something Matt's been working on for like a decade at this point, So
it's a mostly desert region, which isn't good or bad. I'm just observing. And it's got a couple of cool data points. Smolder Crown, which seems to be a mountain range, looks really cool. The Ashen Ridge, and it looks like the capital is a city called Ank'Harel.
Yeah, Ank'Harel.
Yeah, and there's a city called Final. Ooh. So we'll see if any of these pop up, I guess, in C3. I'm sure they will.
I hope so. I bet so. And one thing, we kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I want to jump back to it, because we talked about how every last Thursday of the month, they'll be taking off at least the main campaign, and that's where we might get an EXU, we might get a one shot, who knows what we're going to get. But I think that's a good move for the long term. Just so like not only Matt but like the whole cast just don't like burn out on this. We already talked about how like we understand that at some point Matt's gonna have to step down, but we don't look forward to that. So I think this is a nice kind of like dam the river for helping him not to collapse with everything he has to do. Because I mean, even on top of this, they've got the freaking animated show that's probably like a full-time job,
right,
for a lot of them, and they just all the other stuff they do with their fledgling company they've created now. I just can only imagine how much stuff Matt has to do.
Well, and also the Critical Role brand has grown to be so much more of a presented thing, I guess, rather than just like, hey, the camera's on in our living room as we're playing. So I think with that comes an enormous amount of just fan opinions and criticisms that you have to, you naturally feel the weight of.
Yeah.
And so every episode now isn't just, yeah, we got together and played D&D anymore. It is a intentioned produced thing. So the episode goes up and you watch it just like you would any show, any big new show that you're watching on a week-to-week basis. And the cast naturally, I think, has to see the tweets going out, the thoughts and opinions going out.
Yep.
I think there's a lot more mental
100%.
I can't think of the word, just mental
strain.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, and what we saw with EXU was people saying, wow, I've never seen so many openly negative people before. And, the critter population has really grown. So, I mean, we even had a comment on one of our videos where it was kind of like, we both of us were like, yikes. But that, the group of people watching the show has grown, and so naturally so has the criticism. So yeah, I can understand needing a mental break for sure.
Yeah. And that also kind of nicely. Well, actually, while we're here, I did. So the premiere's on the October 21st, which I looked, and that's actually the third or the second to last Thursday. So I was like, dang, are we gonna have the premiere and then there's gonna be an off week? But Marisha actually tweeted and clarified that there will be episode 2 will fall on that following Thursday. So that won't really be in effect for the beginning. She said it actually won't really go into effect until next year because in November it's Thanksgiving and they never have an episode that week.
Yeah, okay.
And then it's Christmas and they don't have an episode that week. But
yeah, okay.
So there will be one the first last Thursday, if that's not too confusing.
You don't get your break till Thanksgiving.
But then yeah, just segueing in kind of the same stuff we're talking about into the keeping it pre-recorded, kind of for these same reasons, I think, for just like the flexibility, like you mentioned, being able to record at any time of the day around all of these very busy people's schedules. You know, all of them are, working actors and producers and directors, and a lot of them are moms and dads too. So I can only imagine that this pre-recording schedule has just been a blessing for them. And, maybe they can record 2 episodes in a day and then take a week off, So I'm sure that's like a really nice thing to have in your back pocket. But I will say, I totally understand it. Totally makes sense. But I am sad that we're not getting the live shows. And part of me wonders if they'll ever come back at this point, since all the reasons I just said, that this is just a much better, way of doing things.
I think not. I think even when COVID's a thing of the past, knock on wood, hopefully sooner than later. I think the added flexibility, and again, because Critical Role has become so much of its own branded company now, I think the need for intentional production behind it just makes the pre-recorded structure so much more beneficial.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I do like that. I know this isn't necessarily what you meant, but I do like that they aren't going to produce it any more than they ever had. Like, it's still just going to be the raw, uncut live footage of them playing. Whereas, in things like EXU and even Ashley Johnson's one shot recently, those were both like pretty highly produced with like, maybe cuts or like post production effects thrown in. There's none of that type of stuff for the normal campaigns, which
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, which you might sound like, well, wait, post production can be nice, but it's kind of just like one of the endearing things about it, that you get to see, the raw moments and them, all the stuff that happens between the actual campaign, just like the players interacting and So I'm glad we get to still have that.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it like let's take a break, for example. You contrast that with campaign 1, where someone walks into the room and says, "Hey, everyone, like, here's some cool stuff," and, talks about product or whatever. Contrast that with EXU, where some pre-recorded or a series of pre-recorded commercials come on. I would expect the latter moving forward compared to the former. I don't necessarily have any preference. I would just envision Critical Role as a brand having that sort of intentional collaborative marketing with whatever content they're putting out.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
So that's kind of what I mean of like just the benefit of being able to do all of that. You record it, episode always gets recorded on a Tuesday, for example, and then they have a couple of days to get all that stuff put together. It would be hard for me to envision them ever moving away from that, I guess.
No, right. Yeah, I agree there, especially for like the ads and stuff that run during the breaks and stuff, and like Abria throwing to future Matt and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's here to stay. But just in terms of like during the actual gameplay, and they're not going to cut the segments out that are just kind of dead air in terms of storytelling, but might be like Sam and Marisha talking about something. I'm just glad that we're like retaining those moments.
Right. Retain.
Ooh.
Catch that reference. By the way,
go ahead.
The music playing after the announcement today, what was that from? And is it potentially something customized for this next campaign.
I would imagine that it's customized at this point, and my best guess was that it probably is something Cole McGinnis made. He's like their go-to guy.
It sounded amazing.
Yeah, I bet it is.
It was really cool.
Because if that wasn't itself I imagine there's gonna be like a new theme for campaign 3 that will like play during the. I was gonna say the art reel, but we'll get to that in a second. But it will play during like the opening and the closing, maybe. So I'm excited for that. Honestly, since they've had, I wonder if there will be like an animated intro for campaign 3, like from the premiere, because like there was an animated intro for campaign 2 eventually, and like during campaign 1, like they were nowhere near where they were today. So they had there were no animated intros in campaign 1, but they did like make intros eventually, and they made a few throughout the course of C1. So it'll be interesting to see what they have for the premiere here. If they have something as advanced and awesome as a full animated intro, or maybe they'll just have like a music note with a title screen or something. I hadn't thought about that yet, but it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. Let's talk about the art reel.
Yeah.
This one hurts.
So they announced that there would be no more art reel during the opening credits or the break and the ending credits, which has been in like a mainstay of Critical Role and a lot of people's like one of their most favorite things. And I think this stems from some copyright legality big issues. A few weeks back, they put out a big, like, updated copyright policy that I know caused a lot of stir within the community. I don't really know a lot about this. I'm not a fan artist myself, so I can't speak to, how this affects them or anything. So I don't want to like put my foot in my mouth or step on anyone's toes. But from what I gather is that Critical Role is becoming a very big brand, a very big company. Like they're legit. They have to protect their IP, like they have to start taking those steps to trademark their stuff and, have these copyright laws or whatever it may be called, have that all in place, for as they get bigger so they can like take action when people rip them off,
Right.
So I think that's the biggest reason and main reason that they did this. But I know because a lot of that legal language and stuff, a lot of the fan artists were caught off guard and are like, wait, can I no longer make like my Etsy print of a Critical Role character? And, do I have to take down this? Can I, this, and this? And so there's a lot of gray area there. And again, I can't speak for anyone, but for me, I'm giving the CR team the benefit of the doubt based on, the type of people they seem to be, that I really don't think there was anything nefarious on their part about this. I think this was hey, we're like a company now and these types of things have to be done.
Yeah.
Anyway, to get through all of that, I think that might be the reason the art reel has to come down, because of the cloudiness of making sure that they have like the correct person's permission, for like just something that was posted on Twitter that this person said they made, they don't necessarily know that that's true. So I don't think they can take the risk of running something on a live stream that many people are seeing.
Right.
Whereas with the art gallery on their website, that'll probably be smaller and they probably will have been able to get like actual permission in that case. Right. So that's where I think this is coming from, which sucks though. But
no, it does suck. I mean, it is one of my favorite parts of the show. I mean, obviously them playing D&D is amazing, but I just always really liked it. And so definitely it's a bummer, but my thought process was similar to yours in that I assumed that because of Critical Role becoming more of its own frankly international brand, it seems like this is something regarding like legality, staying out of gray areas that could potentially harm the brand, and things that we would expect any business to do to protect their brand. And I understand it because there's even been tension in the past where the CR cast has always been extremely collaborative and inviting of their viewers, and to the point where even some viewers have taken advantage of the Critical Role cast. There's been times in the past, for example, as a separate issue, where a fan essentially gave their own criticisms or advice for the show, and the Critical Role cast, again, being inviting and being approachable, essentially was a sounding board for that advice. And then that fan basically turned around and said, I was your consultant for the show and you have stiffed me now, what you owed me, my consulting fees. And there was actually, it was a very insulated event, but there was, for a brief moment, a large outcry of CR is stiffing this person who's they've taken advantage of this fan. And then the CR team or the PR part essentially had to come out and say, hey, actually, this is what happened. This person was giving their unasked for advice, and we were being very understanding and polite, and thank you for that. But there was never a contract. There was never an exchange of money or goods or services. And it was someone who had basically, like I said, was taking advantage of the Critical Role brand.
Right.
And so all that to say, I think it would be unwise for them to not be proactive in trying to protect their IP. So I understand it. It sucks. It's painful, but it is what it is. And naturally, I think I trust them. I think they're going to, in that place, they'll put something that maybe not by October 21st, but eventually something will fill that void that will feel pretty natural, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. But it is just a bummer because that has been like an integral part of this entire experience. Like the relationship between Critical Role and its community, and specifically its like fan art community, has been like part of the lifeblood of everything. They've collaboratively released a handful of art books, and I hope that they will continue to do that because obviously in that case, everyone is getting fairly compensated. It's all legal. So I know that they care about their relationship with that specific subset of the community, and so who maybe they're all greedy, nefarious people behind the scenes, but for my money, they have my benefit of the doubt that this is just what they had to do. But yeah, so I mean, if you're like us and you're gonna miss that too, definitely know that it'll still be there on Twitter. Like I follow a bunch of Critical Role fan artists, and there's like hashtags specifically for it, like hashtag Critical Role fan art. But you can probably just find it under the Critical Role hashtag itself. So it'll still be there. It just won't be able to, they won't have the nice little gallery of it while we're watching the episodes.
And to be fair, anyone who's maybe they're watching Critical Role for the first time, they're not going to know any different anyway.
Right.
The veterans, obviously it's a staple. It change never feels great, but it's fortunately not, the removal of it isn't something that is going to reduce the quality of what we're experiencing, which is a bunch of nerds playing D&D in a very engaging way, I guess. So
yeah.
All right. So October 21st.
Yeah, just 3 short weeks away. Man, I'm excited.
Yeah. I'd love for you guys who are watching to let us know, what are you most excited about, and what are the things you're wondering about in terms of the show, the format, the style, the setting. Is it going to be right after EXU's timeline or a little bit farther in advance? Let us know, and definitely tweet at us at Pxlists. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll be looking out for that lore video, the new set video, and we might make another piece of we might do another something before it drops, because one thing I would like to do is like kind of put in our predictions for what we think the cast is going to roll. I don't want to do that right now because I don't want to force it. I want to think about it. But maybe if nothing else, we can just tweet out what we think if we don't do another video. But
it'll depend how. Because they went out of the traditional. We had a homebrew, the Blood Hunter, and we had a Goblin playable character.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how far outside the norm. We did have the comment from Liam of him going back to the original 4 classes. And so we'll see. But then there was a comment on the announcement of, I can't remember who he said was asking a bunch of questions.
Oh, it was Taliesin. So that stuck out to me too. It's like, what is he cooking up?
Yeah, which he was also the homebrewed Blood Hunter.
Yeah.
So we'll see, how they, how traditional or untraditional they are, but we'll be here for it.
If they put out another darkened silhouette photo, we'll definitely make a video and take our guesses on that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right.
Alrighty, man.
Well, thumbnail.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be like super excited. Like,
yeah, I like that. Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right.
Yep.
Ready?
All right. Yep.
Okay. I think we got it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah.
I'll catch you later.
Bye, y'all.